to say, a lot of it is training. What is the training all about? Whatever. Okay, we are going live on Facebook, folks.
Showtime!
It's time for that radio show everyone loves.
Do not attempt to change the station. Just listen, and we'll keep broadcasting.
Time to begin the show.
1039 LI News Radio presents Your Island, the very best in talk radio, with your host, Tom Schiliro.
Once again, welcome to our Wednesday midweek edition. Now, this segment of our program is being brought to you by the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association. The PBA serves to support law enforcement, participate in special events and programs, all designed to help protect our community. They care about you and keeping us all safe. From the anti-drinking and driving campaigns to protecting our children with education on the Megan's Law, PBA promotes a great relationship between the police and the people it's sworn to serve. Suffolk County is one of the safest counties in the country, and the PBA takes pride in its strong belief in our security. They have honored our fallen heroes and contribute greatly to our suburban way of life. Need to know more? Go right to that website, www.suffolkcountypba.org. Noel DiGirolamo Perez. And as you know, we live stream on Facebook. Keep announcing that every once in a while. You can watch us and send us some comments. It's Your Island with Tom Schiliro Facebook page. Also, we're on YouTube right now. We've got most of the shows from this summer downloaded on YouTube. So you go onto YouTube, put my name in there, Tom Schiliro, and you can look at some of the shows there, all on YouTube. And it'd be great if you could subscribe. The more subscriptions we get, the better off we are. That's Tom Schiliro over there on YouTube. Also, just some side business here. I want to say hello to Jack over there at Jack's Laundry in Bayport. We have our admirers out there. We have people that listen to our show pretty regularly, and I wanted to say hello to Jack. He's over there in Jack's Laundry in Bayport. I understand he is a big fan of the show and listens pretty much every day, so all of that is all good stuff. And we'll talk a little bit about the RNC convention. I want to talk about that just a bit, and then we have Lisa Navarra coming in from Child Behavior Consulting, talk about the schools. We're getting close, about a week or so away. I know the teachers have to report within a week or so, and then the kids will be reporting, and just a lot of rancor with that. People are calling on and telling what their stories are. So it's just a lot going on. As far as the convention was concerned, pretty interesting. I think Melania Trump, the first lady, I think she kind of stole the show a little bit last night. And they had it over there in a rose garden. That's really kind of never happened before. But then again, we've never had a pandemic like this in the last 100 years where Americans had to stay apart from one another. So that's kind of taken away from the RNC convention and the pomp and circumstance. Have you heard me say that? Our number here is 631-451-1039. If you want to opine about the convention and the Republicans getting set, whose message? We started this yesterday, and we're going to keep on talking about it. We got Rich Christ coming on the last portion of the show, and we'll have him give us his take on where this convention is at and who's got the better message. And again, we're hearing things about Joe Biden talking about tax structure, changing the economy. Question is, what do people really want, and how are people really going to vote? And that's a big part of it. I have to say this: it was casually mentioned yesterday, but I know I raised it earlier in the week. I really do want to know this whole thing about Hunter Biden and Burisma, the Ukrainian natural gas company that was doing business with the United States at the time Joe Biden was vice president. And you kind of wonder, what a coincidence that the vice president's son, of all the people that could have been hired, Americans that could have been hired by a foreign company, they picked, coincidentally, the son of the vice president, who became a key person within Burisma and made a heck of a lot of money. Incredible amounts of money, to the point of a couple of $1 million over a course of time that went to the Biden family. And I want answers about that, and I hope Joe Biden answers it, because if that's the case, we'd have to say there's a side of candidate Biden, former Vice President Biden, that seeks to enrich himself or his family through his political connections. That's no good. There's a word for that, and it's called corruption. And you wonder, if it was Donald Trump Jr. or Eric Trump, what would be the case? Would that be happening with them? And if it was, would it be all over the place? So I wonder about that. And, to me, it's something that I think has to be considered and be part of this presidential campaign. Because if this guy is predisposed to that, in the meantime, Hunter Biden did take a trip on Air Force Two while Vice President Biden went to China to do some negotiations. What was Hunter Biden doing on a government-owned plane that's supposed to be used by the President and the Vice President of the United States? I'd like to know this, because this man was paid a lot of money. And was he the only person for the job, or was it a coincidence? Which would kind of make it eyebrow raising, so to speak. But let's talk about the convention. We've got Frank DiNatale. Frank, again, former honorary delegate to the 2016 convention. So he's not able to be there today or this week because of what's happened with COVID-19. But I suspect that had this not happened, this pandemic, Frank would have been a key part of that convention. But Frank's on the phone with us right now. Frank, are they going to make an issue about Burisma and Hunter Biden? Because CNN and MSNBC is not.
Well, yes, the Democrats, the Republican National Committee, and the president's campaign will make an issue of this, because the reason is because CNN, MSDNC, ABC, CBS, NBC are making issues of allegedly going after the president's taxes, attacking his corporation. They're going after him any which way they can to try to find something regarding his character, relating to business. So if you're going to do it for one, it's good for the other.
But they're not doing that. Last night, the only persons I know a couple of the speakers brought it up about Hunter Biden. They brought that up. But unless you get these journalists / opinion makers / who knows who they are saying it, the American people, I don't think, if you polled the American people right now and knew what were the causes of the president's impeachment earlier this year, they would say it was a phone call with the Ukraine president. But if you asked them about Burisma, the Ukrainian natural gas company that employed Hunter Biden, nobody's going to know that. Now, why is it? Because it's not out in the press. And I'm concerned about that. Because is there a dark side to Joe Biden? Is he a money grab type of politician? What am I saying here, Frank?
Well, you're correct, but as I mentioned earlier on your show, and good afternoon to you and your listeners, it is the job of the RNC and Republicans nationally and the president's campaign to inform the American people regarding all of these facts. And yes, sure, if we had an unbiased and objective, real media, Tom, this guy wouldn't even be a candidate for anything. Because Joe Biden, ever since he was a United States Senator with a nearly 50 career year in the swamp, meaning D.C., most of that career as a United States Senator from Delaware, it's not just to hear that his hometown is Scranton, Pennsylvania. He hasn't lived in Scranton since he was 8. I mean, give me a break.
Well, all right, that's all fluff. I mean, that's okay. I mean, that's going to slide off the American people. What is not going to slide off is, did he use his influence as vice president of the United States to get his son this really good job that made a heck of a lot of money, and the man had no qualifications for this or had no business being part of Burisma. But the Ukrainian government, as far as they're concerned, they wanted this, because they want to do business with the United States of America. That's who wouldn't want to do business with the United States, particularly that it was going to help them quite a bit. Now, there was a prosecutor that Joe Biden got fired. That's another thing. That was a prosecutor in the Ukraine that was investigating this sweetheart deal. And somehow the VP, Joe Biden, candidate for president of the United States, gets the guy fired. Come on, man. Why are we ignoring this, Frank?
Well, because it's not being widely reported, Tom. Joe Biden has a history, and this fact, your listeners can all look this stuff up. It's very easy to find, of selling his office as a United States senator. His brother, in particular, his one son, Hunter Biden, the sister, all kinds of contracts, building contracts down in the Caribbean that the brother was able to get. Joe Biden has been for sale ever since day one, when we were first elected to the United States Senate from Delaware. So this is nothing that's new with Biden.
No, and it's true, and all that's true. I know there was a cousin involved. He got a favorite cousin a job. I mean,
right.
That's old style Tammany Hall politics going back to New York City, or Richard Daley politics in Chicago going back to the 50s and 60s. Now, you may say and you're right, but if you think about it, that this is the third decade of the 21st century, there's corruption, but it's not so blatant. This is blatant corruption. That's what it is. And I think the American people need to know, while this man was vice president of the United States, did his family become rich over this? Was this money coming in from the Ukraine and this natural gas company and deals they were making with the United States? Because it gets kind of complicated. Once you start reading this, it starts branching off the trees of it's like the branches of a tree, starting with the trunk.
And let's not forget China. Flying on Air Force Two with his father as vice president of the United States. He takes his father, meets with these investors to invest in a hedge fund company, which he just recently started before he flew over to China with it.
Coincidence?
And he comes away with $1.5 billion, which his fee for managing the fund is in the millions. So there's plenty of quid pro quo Joe stuff. I mean, that's why
I would think I'm looking forward to the debates, and I would think number 45.
If we have
them, and I think Donald Trump will be bringing this in, and I think it's that important.
Oh, well, absolutely. But Biden and his staff knows they can't let him out of the basement. I mean, I'm not sure.
Well, he's going to have to come out of the basement. The American people are not going to stand for that. They're not going to stand for it.
He's not campaigning. And if he doesn't debate the president, that's going to hurt him more than he does.
Yeah.
Every time he's off script, candidate Biden, he's horrendous.
Frank, thanks for giving us an update. I know we got sidetracked a little bit, but we'll try to bring you in every day at the convention just to give us a quick update on what's going on. Once again, Frank DiNatale helping us out with the RNC convention going on this week. Frank, have a great day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. I'm Tom Schiliro. When we get back, Lisa Navarra, child behavior consultant, coming in, talking about schools opening. We're getting close. What is going on with COVID-19 and all of this stuff. We'll be right back. following are the words of Noel DiGirolamo, president of the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association.
Police officers are already being targeted for assassination. Releasing their personal information to criminals will only further endanger them. Stand with law enforcement. Defend the police.
The following radio show is live, except for the announcement you're hearing right now.
Welcome back to Your Island Live with your host, Tom Schiliro, on 1039 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back as we're moving right along on our Wednesday edition. Now, in the studio, we've been getting a lot of emails and text messages and so on, people concerned about the schools opening right now. And it's still a hot debate on there out there. I know a lot of things are going on. We have our conventions going on, people talking about the presidential race and so on, but we can't ignore the fact, and I believe there's 162 school districts in Nassau and Suffolk County. All of them have different plans. So no better person to bring in is one of our senior contributors on our midday program here. It's Lisa Navarra from Child Behavior Consulting. She's here today to bring this conversation forward. And I'm hoping there's a lot of parents out there that give us a call and how to handle this the best way. I'm talking to a lot of parents, and although what was good for March and April is not good for September and October, this is what I'm hearing, Lisa. And a lot of the parents are concerned about this. It's almost like a menu. Well, you can choose this or you can choose this on education. I can remember back in the day when everything was normal, kids went to school. Day after Labor Day, the teachers were there. 2 days after Labor Day, the students were there. The classrooms were all shiny and clean. Let's get to work. That's not happening now, so we need to talk about that. So if you are a parent out there and you have a concern on how the best way to deal with this, we have our expert, Lisa Navarra. She's in the studio with us. And our number here is 631-451-1039. Let's start very simply. This opening of the school year, 2021, is not like any we've ever seen.
Absolutely not. And thank you so much for having me today. I really wanted to reach out to your listeners today. I want to provide them with some things to really think about in a concrete, positive way, and really to help with this transition into school this year. So yes, things are a lot different. And what I'd like to say is we need to provide our students and our children in schools and at home with certain strategies. And the very first thing between my professional development that I have been providing, as well as with the parents and the children that I'm working with, I keep reiterating this. This is the most important September we have ever seen entering any school year. The reason why I say that is because we don't know what tomorrow brings. And so we might be on a hybrid model where students go into schools one day, or we might be in a full day attendance in-person model for education one day. And then there's someone who's got COVID, and that whole school and or district can shut down. And so with this September, I implore all the parents and the educators to really focus in on building strong relationships with one another, strong relationships with the students and the teacher, because online learning is not easy for all students, as we know, and we need that connection, that physical connection, to last as long and as strong as we can should we go on to a fully remote model of education.
Okay, 631-451-1039, talking about, and I'm going to use the phrase hodgepodge way of schools reopening because of all the different districts. It's not like in most states you have countywide districts. And if it's a certain county, let's say Citrus County in Florida, they have their own school district. If they make a decision, it encompasses the entire county. We don't have that here in Suffolk County. We have so many different districts, and we have so many different questions from so many different parents that are living in all these different geographic areas. It's a big part of it. One thing I can tell you, and I've talked to enough students, which, I try to go back to my days many, many, many years ago when I was in the public school system. You kind of would almost like to say, wow, I don't have to go to school. But, it depends on that. That's all over with now. These kids want to get back into school. And the question is how will they fare under a hybrid system, as you say? Kids need structure. I've always found that. They need to know what's responsible for them. They may complain about it, but just from a layperson point of view, that unless we give them specifics of what to do, it's very difficult. Now you're going to ask them, well, 2 days a week. This is what I'm hearing. 2 days a week you can do school in session or in school, and 2 days a week you can do something else. I don't know. I mean, how does that affect the psyche of the kid? And I guess you might have to narrow it down to an age group, and see what some of the parents are thinking out there. 631-451-1039 about what is your school district doing and what are your thoughts about it? But we'll get back to Lisa.
And so, to your point, Tom, it really does depend on the child in terms of what they can handle, what kind of structure that they need. Yes, lots of students need structure. They need to know what time they need to log on and specifically when and what's expected of them, where others, they can adjust and regulate themselves. So, like, for instance, my son, he's when he is not in school and he's got remote, he is under the impression that there's not going to be specific times. And with that, he says, okay, I'm going to start at 9:30. And for the most part, he's probably going to start with that, but then need that push to make sure you stay on that schedule. And he's going into 11th grade. So when you get into the younger grades or kids who really do need that structure, it gets tricky. That structure, rather. It does get tricky. But I want to be able to provide today some certain specific strategies.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and here are some tips. If your child and when your child is learning online, please keep in mind any side conversations that you might have. If you have a quick question you want to ask your child, remember, they're quote unquote in class now. And so we need to see this as that's their work.
What if there's a favorite TV program on? What happens?
Well, then DVR it, and if you don't have it, then have somebody else DVR it. I don't know what to tell you. But I tell you not to have those side conversations. And, if you get a little heated about a topic in the background, go into another room. Make sure a conversation is not overheard, because then the whole class could either see it, or if your child is unmuted at the time because they go to answer a question, then whatever it is that you're saying, or the background noise and music, baby crying, then it will also be part of the classroom environment.
I'm looking at some of the districts, and again, I've always said we needed to consolidate not our districts, but the way in which we do business as far as education is concerned. We don't need 162 superintendents or buying agents and so on, but that's for another conversation. It's not what I'm talking about. But let's take, I picked one district for today's discussion, the Riverhead School District. So Riverhead, the governor gave the go-ahead August 7th. All right, school districts, do what you got to do, but make sure I'm okay with it. This governor's getting out of hand right now. That people are calling into my show and calling him Emperor Cuomo. But again, another discussion. So Riverhead, one of the many, many, many school districts in Nassau and Suffolk County, one of the hundreds, if not thousands, school districts around New York State. So they released a plan that says Riverhead students will receive 2 days in-person instruction, followed by either 3 or 4 days of virtual instruction. I guess that's computer, depending on their grade level. Elementary school students will receive 2 days in-person instruction and 3 days of virtual instruction each week. Students will then be divided into 2 groups, attending in-person classes on either Mondays, Tuesdays, or Thursdays, Fridays. Both elementary student groups will receive virtual instruction on Wednesdays. Now, all right, I could read that and kind of figure it out. But the kids, I don't know, Lisa. I don't know.
It's going to be one small
That's
step
nuts.
in front of the other. Nobody really even knows. The anxiety is high. But I can tell you this. I was at the dog park the other day, and
Okay.
I met a second grade teacher. Never met her before. And boy, was she absolutely invigorating. She says, it's time. I love my kids. I miss my students. I want to get back to class. And I'm going to protect myself as much as possible, but this is where we need to be. And so hopefully with that positivity and that just desire to be with your students again, it will eliminate some of that gray area. Okay, so here's our plan. This is what I understand it to be. Let's guide the students the best that we can. And so it's an experiment.
Yes.
Right? There's no research done on the plans proposed. It's an experiment, and that's what
I'm reading this, and if you, God forbid you have more than one kid to try to figure this out.
right.
There's going to be different systems and so on. Now, some people listen and say, but Tom, you're ignoring what I'm going to call the sword of Damocles that are hanging over every custodian, every teacher, every administrator, every student, and that's COVID-19. and all of this in the consideration of it, you still have to stop this damn pandemic, or at least stop the spread of it. Whether that's even possible, given these type of, I guess, precautions that are being taken in the school districts. So it's not that they're just changing the schedule for the schools. They're trying to keep everybody safe, trying to keep everybody healthy, at the same time keep education going. Sometimes people might say, this is impossible.
Because it could very well feel that way. We haven't been in this at all. And so one way to eliminate some of the mystery of what schools will look like, check out your school district's website and see if they have provided a virtual tour. And if they haven't, see if you can email the one of the administrators, central administrators, to see if that's something that they can do. Because what you can do then is show your child, this is what you can expect. This is how you're expected to walk in the hallways. When you first enter the building, you might have a temperature check. And when you're in the classroom, you're no longer at tables. Now there's half the amount of desks and half the amount of supplies. Nothing can be shared. And so to help that plan to really maneuver itself, if it's going to work, we all need to stay calm and prepared. And being prepared helps us to stay calm and to work together.
This is a test. I mean, this is without a doubt. I mean, I know we talk about schools and there's tests on Fridays and things like that, but this is a test to whether this could really work. And I have my, I guess, reservations about it. But we're going to talk more. I mean, I'm not finished with Riverhead yet. 631-451-1039. Thoughts on what your district's doing. What are you doing with your children? What are you doing with your grandchildren? Because so many grandparents are involved in this also. Get Frank DiNatale on the air again. Hey, Frank.
Yes, I had to call in. And good afternoon to you, Tom, again. And good afternoon to Lisa Navarra.
Navarro's the guy who works in the White House.
Oh, that's right.
Hi, Frank.
I botched your name.
Okay.
Forgive me for that, Tom. You hit upon this when you first started this segment with Lisa. It's that we have 162. You said 163.
Something like that. Districts in Nassau and Suffolk County. Yes. Yeah.
That's problem number one.
Yes.
Second problem is this is not about the students. These teachers unions don't care about these students. They don't. I mean, you have the second largest teachers union in this state threatening to strike. They don't want to go back. So this crap about teachers' care, and all, that's a bunch of baloney. What they should do is the superintendents who get the absorbent amount of money is if your teachers don't want to show up to work, the ones that are threatening to strike, they need to be fired. And hire teachers that are willing to work. And this pandemic is way overblown, Tom. I know you and I have had conversations privately.
Right.
You know how I feel about this whole pandemic. I mean, mostly for me, it's a bunch of crap.
Right.
It really is.
So you think the kids just have a normal school year, 2 days after Labor Day, back in the schools, no social distancing, no masks, nothing?
Right. And we hear all this nonsense about follow the science. Well, these kids, one, don't get it. Very few, if any, have died from it. And, if they I mean, it's just silly. This whole thing is silly. This is not going to work. Unfortunately, this is not going to work.
Well, hopefully, we won't need to stay in a hybrid model for too long. But as for the unions, I have to say, those unions they're made of so many caring, dedicated teachers.
Okay.
And, with that, it comes a lot of confusion for everybody, depending especially on what you've been experienced health-wise, even with your own
I would say
parents.
this. I mean, I was in a class, when I got out of college, I was a teacher, and I was in a classroom now for about 10 years. And I would say every 2.5 months I got a cold. And yet now, I'm not in the classroom anymore. I don't get sick at all anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and that's just a common cold. So to say you can't get something in it, I'm here to tell you firsthand. Every 2.5 months, it was clockwork. There was some sort of a cold. If there was a stomach virus going around, everybody
the
got
whole
it.
class would be knocked out.
Schools can transmit stuff. They could transmit stuff.
And we didn't close the schools when we had people had mass break out of flu.
Yeah,
we didn't close
flu, stomach virus.
That's right. This is all political, Tom. As you know where I am on this nonsense. It's just one more thing to have some sort of effect of not reelecting this president and Republicans losing.
Well, time will tell. That's for sure.
Well, that's going to be over in about 70 days, 69 days, or whatever it is right now.
Right.
But
If Biden wins, it'll be all over November 4th. believe me. But he's not going to win.
This country is great and will survive. I will tell you that right now. In
Oh,
fact,
absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Lisa.
Thanks,
Frank.
Frank. Appreciate it. Our number here is 631-451-1039. Mike Scudero, I think you had a story to tell. You said your brother?
Yeah, so my brother's going into 11th grade.
Well, now, what school district is that?
Franklin Square School District.
All right, Franklin Square, Nassau County. Okay.
Yeah, and they have a system going there, sort of like the same hybrid thing. I believe he'd be going into school Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and the other 2 days, Tuesday, Thursday, he'd be doing it online at home. And they also got rid of classes that go every other day, like gym or science labs. Like, they got rid of those. Those are done.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
I didn't know that.
So
wow.
phys ed, at least in his school, in what was my high school too, is
No
done.
more phys ed.
Is virtual? Are they doing it virtually?
No.
Not
It's
even virtually.
there's going to be no gym, and apparently his science labs too, because those lab classes are things that you do every other day. So every other day classes, when it's already a hybrid system, is kind of impossible.
So they access those phys ed teachers?
I guess I don't know what they're doing.
I wonder.
I don't know what they're doing with
We
the
need
phys
to
ed
find out,
teachers,
yeah, right.
unfortunately. But he told me that gym is not happening until at least something happens with the virus, as far as a vaccine or something.
I know for some school districts, depending on what grade level it is, special areas are being provided in person, and some are specifically being provided online. So, for instance, music and art in some districts are being provided in person, whereas phys ed, which is that's going to be a very interesting challenge, will be online. So everybody's different.
And the recognition, again, we focused in on Riverhead today, because Riverhead is a microcosm of the 162 districts. Now, the superintendent wrote a letter to the parents there and said, well, we know the schedule for the high school and middle school is slightly more complicated now, he's saying. He says, because the size of the student population, students in grades 7 through 12 will follow a 6-day cycle rather than a 5-day cycle. Think about that for a minute. So the Mondays are never always going to be the same. And they will be divided into 3 groups, with each receiving 2 days of classroom instruction, followed by 4 days of remote learning, at times interrupted by weekends. I mean, this is what we're saying. Due to the size of our district student enrollment, this is the superintendent writing to the parents of the Riverhead School District, the lack of space throughout the district, and the mandates regarding social distancing, this plan is our most viable option at this time. I don't even know if the people who think they know. And this is what's bothering me, Lisa, and this is why you're here today.
Well, that's why I want to give specific strategies on how to connect with your teacher and take it one step at a time, one day at a time, and hopefully you get those days correct. And in some of that, I want you to ask your school districts, how are you utilizing your mental health staff? How are they going to provide support to children that might be in your own child's class? Support if they get upset. They're not. The environment is different. You don't know what they're coming back to and what they experienced. So you want to ask, how are you using the psychologists, social workers, and counselors?
I want to get to some calls before our break, and then I want to continue what you're saying. I want to take phone calls because I think it's important that people can ask questions and even just sound off of what's happening. Evan over there in Islip. Evan, what say you?
Hi, just responded to your last caller's comment, how, I guess one administrator said that, they weren't going to do anything until there was a vaccine or something like that. I got a child who, thank God, our district started full-time. You can go back, elementary school. But, what? I mean, if you look at the flu vaccine, for instance, I think 2 or 3 years ago it was 35% effective. I mean, these vaccines are not 100% effective, not even close. We're lucky if they're 50%. So, even with that, when do things go back to quote unquote normal, if ever? I understand people's reservations. I know people who are doing virtual with their kids. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where we have to go to work. That's not an option.
Oh, that's it too, and that's a big part of it. That's the most we get from the folks that are writing into us and saying, "I've got to go to work." School's being used as almost a daycare or a child care center. I want to get to one last call because we got a minute left. Evan, thank you very much. Paul from Riverhead, and then when we get back after the break. Go ahead, Paul. You're on the air.
Hey, Tom. Hey, Lisa. Great show so far. Just wanted to drop a little point on there. Riverhead's budget failed twice. So we're going to be working with the district on this virtual learning platform without a budget. And you know what? If you're going to let the kids in school for 2 days, let them in for 5. What's the difference?
Yeah.
Once you walk in the door, if there's any risk, the risk is there for 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 1 day. It doesn't make any sense. No stress.
And let me get to our last call. You make so much sense. I don't mean to pick on Riverhead. It's the one I just chose. But let's take Chris over there in Middle Island. Chris, give you about a minute, and then we're going to have to take a break. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I understand about precautions and, virtual distance learning and social distance, but we have to remember that we're failing our kids because kids are not designed to be at home on a computer learning. They need to be in a classroom with their peers. They need interaction. They need, participation. We're failing our kids for the sake of, quote unquote, following the science, which we're not doing. We're giving mixed messages, and we're failing our kids.
Well, that's what somebody would say to you. But what about COVID-19? What about the spread of this virus? I mean, that's what people would say to your response to that too. What?
Well, I can respect that.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: we're going to Walmart, we're going to Home Depot, we're going to Lowe's, we're going to all these superstores, and nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Yet when it comes to our kids, we're willing to sacrifice our children and their education for the sake of what? That's the real question.
So one quick point to this is that we need to make sure that this is something temporary.
Okay, well, when we get back, there's a lot of people that made comments on the Facebook page. I want to read everybody's comment. We got Patrick that wrote in. We got Angela that wrote in. Stephanie, again, Patrick a couple of times. Stephanie also a couple of times. So I want to read their comments. So if you're still hanging on with this, I'm going to read your comments and then go from there. I'm Tom Schiliro. We'll be right back.
showtime.
It's time for that radio show everyone loves.
Do not attempt to change the station. Just listen, and we'll keep broadcasting.
Time to begin the show.
1039 LI News Radio presents Your Island, the very best in talk radio, with your host, Tom Schiliro.
And once again, welcome back. 1 hour down, 1 to go. This segment of our program is being brought to you by the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association. The PBA, it serves to support law enforcement, participate in special events and programs, all designed to help protect our community. They care about you and keeping us all safe. From the anti-drinking and driving campaigns to protecting our children with education on the Megan's Law. PBA promotes a great relationship between the police and the people it's sworn to serve. Suffolk County is one of the safest counties in the country, and the PBA takes pride in its strong belief in our security. They have honored our fallen heroes and contribute greatly to our suburban way of life. Need to know more? Go right to that website, www.suffolkcountypba.org. Noel DiGirolamo, President. Lisa Navarra, Child Behavior Consulting, in the studio, talking about the opening of schools. We're there, folks. Couple more weeks. Right after Labor Day, teachers report, then the kids will report. But it's such a hodgepodge type of discussion right now. It's hard to, for the most part, pin it down to what districts are doing what, how they're doing it, and what's to the benefit of the kids and the health and safety of the teachers, administrators, bus drivers, you name it, everybody involved in our schools, which for the most part, involved thousands upon thousands of people. A lot of people have been writing in, commenting. I wanted to say what Patrick had to say. Patrick writes in, 100% agree that these kids need to go to school, need to engage and socialize. Now, we know all that, and that's how important it is. And the governor has given the okay for interscholastic athletics. Some need that encouragement and engagement of motivation competition. But then Pat also writes back that the virtual instruction that we saw in March and April, if it's the same as it was in March and April, they give the kids work assignments and then there's no instruction. Now that's where you come in, Lisa. I mean, how do we circumvent that to the point where there is that learner, instructor, teacher, student relationship? Because I think what Patrick's writing in is right on.
Absolutely, and thank you for bringing that up. It's a very, very valid comment and question. The experience that people and most people had come this spring was survival mode. All these platforms that were delivering these quote-unquote instruction were new. People were battling their own demons at the time with this COVID virus. But now, and I can even attest to that for myself, I mean, I've been through professional development this week even, and I have all week to go. And there's a lot of districts that have purchased different programs, and they're providing the professional development so they're ready to go come school. And listen, it's going to be a learning curve for everybody. And, you know, until you really get your feet wet and practice and do, then you're not going to get it down to perfection. But until then, at least the school districts are really investing in a lot of professional development and also purchasing of new programs. And not only that, they also have different programs for parents and professional development for parents. So also see within your district if you can even get professional development on the platforms that the teachers and students will be providing for class instruction.
631-451-1039 to answer some of the comments that were coming in. Stephanie very simply writes, William Floyd School District. We were talking about Riverhead, but again, Riverhead's a microcosm of the other districts. They're very similar type of plans, is doing 2 days a week in person and then 3 days virtual. And as she said, and it's really the collateral damage, and it's stressful for the working parents, and that's the collateral damage. I mean, again, beyond our discussion for today, but how, what do you say? What do you say to these parents? And I'm saying grandparents too, because a lot of them have been tasked with watching the kids while they're in their off virtual day or whatever you want to call it.
That's another ugly reality of today's situation. So what I say to that is, let's make sure that when our kids are in school, as well as when they are at home, that everybody is really practicing those protocols to keep COVID away. Because if we can do that, schools stay open longer, our numbers are down, then they can open up to full time all day. So that's our number one objective right there, is to keep COVID away, so that way we don't have to see a whole school year like this. We have to make it through the fall. Make sure we don't have a resurgence. And in the meantime, being safe, but I also want you to make sure that your kids are staying connected and you're staying connected in a positive way with your teachers. This is all new for everybody, and if there's ever a time to work together, this is it.
You know, Angela just writes in a comment, and of course, this would be great for another discussion, but she wants her $6,000 back from her school district, from her taxes from the Patchogue Medford High School. And I can understand that because she's not the only one that has expressed that. And but she's saying they're not offering a 5-day remote option, only half and half. And as far as she's concerned, and I guess if we're talking about the science, well, why couldn't you get COVID-19 on a 2-day week versus a 5-day week when you can get it also? Are we just, for the most part, bringing down the statistics on it? Well, if you only have a 2-day exposure, you have less of a chance of getting it if you had a 5-day exposure. It's almost to the point where that's somewhat ridiculous when you think about it. But at the same time, we got to protect the kids. Now, Lisa Navarra, again, you're the educator. You're the one that I think a lot of these school districts have sought after and saying, well, what do you think? What do you think? And what do you think? And you're doing such a great job today in putting this, for the most part, putting this together to try to make all of us understand it. But the bottom line is 2 weeks, something's going to happen with the 2021 school year. And the governor has given free rein for the school districts to do what they want, provided that they have his approval. This is a very, very complicated issue, Lisa.
It is very complicated, but also our different communities are very diverse and very complicated too. And so although it is very confusing when you talk about one school district compared to another in terms of what are they providing in September educationally, but also they need that liberty to be able to provide their districts on a local level what they think that is pertinent for them. I mean, one district might order, actually, I know that they have 13,000 Chromebooks for their students so they can learn at home, and hotspots. There are some districts that don't need to order thousands upon thousands of Chromebooks, right? So we need that kind of liberty to be able to say, this is what we see as the best for our community. But really, we're not going to know until we start.
I could see the superintendent starting off with, what's the optimum situation? The optimum situation is to go back years past and let's do a normal school year. What's the worst situation? Not opening the schools. I think what they did is now they tried to put it in the mix and say, well, what can we do? Well, we can go back to March and April when we didn't have schools, but now we could come up with something else. We did get a caller just now that just didn't want to come on the air, but spoke about the fact that professional development funds were being cut out of the budgets prior to the virus and probably will continue to be. And the caller then says, see massive tax increases. This is something that we have been talking about on our show because the state budget right now is $10 billion in the hole and growing, and most of that money that's in that state budget goes to the school districts to offset the local property tax, and that could result in tax increases. Let's hope there's something that avoids that. I want to say that to our off-air caller, that let's avoid that. But on the other hand, how do we keep this professional development from teaching teachers who are used to lesson plans, are used to desks, are used to kids being lined up in a row, and then come up with this, here comes that word again, hodgepodge way of teaching? How do we do that now, Lisa? Now, that's more in your area.
Absolutely. And professional development should really be the main focus right now for the educators. And there are some districts who are providing more than others. Additionally, there are some districts that are giving their educators time to plan, collaborate, and create those lessons that have to be delivered online. Now, if you don't give a teacher time to be able to learn it efficiently or time to prepare those lessons, where do you give here? And so they're constantly going. I know in the spring, I spoke to a lot of educators. They were getting, and kids were contacting them 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night on the high school level. There were other ones saying, you know what, I wanted to do this video for my kids to stay connected, and I was giving up my family time. My husband works weekends, and he was home that one day, but I had to get this done so I could get it out to them. And so really, the school districts too, they need to provide the time and education to their educators, and that's part of that teamwork that I'm talking about, and staying positive with one another. and really respecting everybody's role and just being there for one another.
Yeah, and I think how this is eventually going to play itself out is very difficult to tell. I think the plans, from what I've seen, the plans are there. I think a lot of parents are in an uproar because they, just from reading what I saw in Riverhead, and I was just looking at that very quickly, I would be confused for at least a full day until I got a pen and paper and tried to make a chart on when the individual students would be going, your sons or daughters would be going off to school, and what would be the best way in which to handle it. How do you see this eventually playing out? Because I'm getting the impression from you, Lisa, that the plans are not set yet. They're not in concrete, that it's an evolving situation, and yet we're about 2 weeks out.
It's ever evolving. And if you hear superintendents talk, they say, at this point, this could change, but at this point, and especially if you work in or live in communities where your numbers are already high, right? So if those numbers reach that 5%, I mean, that's a danger for the school to open, right? And then we can come into a whole nother topic too. And that topic could be live instruction, where the teacher has a camera and a microphone on them delivering instruction, so the children at home are having their class time live, if you will. And so there's a lot that goes into that as well. And so a lot of people have mixed emotions with that. And that's another big difference between some school districts. Not only schedules, but how the instruction's being delivered.
And, there's a lot of ancillary type of businesses associated with them. One is transportation. On the line with us right now, we have Tommy Smith. He's with Suffolk Transportation. And to see what changes or what they have been doing as compared to other school years and so on. Tommy, how are you? Thank you for calling in. Appreciate it.
Hi, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Your thoughts on all of this? Have you folks over there making alternative plans to this? Or you're just going to get the kids to the school as long as the kids are supposed to be there that day and not doing virtual stuff? Is there any changes in your plans? And how do you protect your bus drivers and the kids? Because buses are in closed areas. Tommy?
All right, so we a couple points to make is our operation. We operate in Suffolk County. We provide service for Suffolk County transit operations along with 19 school districts within the county.
Okay.
And our county program never stopped running through the pandemic, and we were able to put plans in place, educate ourselves through this pandemic and challenging times where we were just creating procedures that would talk into the school program when we got back to bringing students to school. So an important point that with all of what we had planned for, our summer special needs transportation programs, we were running 150 units along with our transit operations, total of 650 employees reporting to our facilities. And we're proud to say, 0 in quarantine, 0 sick. So we're, very encouraged that we were be able to put the service out there and healthy environment. Our plans were working. We knew how to make or create safe transportation. And some of these components, are simple. Sanitizing after each run within the vehicle, wiping down the high touch areas.
Okay.
Ventilation within the vehicle. The mask is key for everyone. And one of the items that I'm most proud of that we were nervous about, parents and students did a great job with adhering to the guidelines. And the challenging component to all this is the seating, less reduced capacity. So there's a lot of challenges with our routing, and it just makes it difficult, but we're just managing through the situations. And these AB days are not easy, and but it's a great partnership with the school districts and putting these plans together.
You're in a situation where, of course, you're just like the school districts. You're trying to put something together. You just alluded to the fact that AB days and so on. Now, just enlighten me a little bit. When this happened in March, you ceased to exist. In other words, the operations of busing the kids to school ceased to exist because the schools. So this is just starting now. Am I correct? All of these precautions and all of these plans that you're putting forth, it's just starting now. Am I correct about that?
Somewhat. We had summer programs that began in July, and I think last minute the governor said, all right, we're going to do special needs transportation. And we usually run about 400 routes. This year it was 150. And we had to put together routing and programs very quickly for the school districts. So we were able to get a stepping stone into the full-blown school year. And we basically ran transportation for these last 30 days of school for the summer programs.
Lisa, any thoughts?
Yes.
for
Hi, Tommy. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Yes. Thank you for calling in. This has been a highlight, actually, of a lot of our conversations that we've had in terms of really preparing children and parents for their bus ride. Because as we know, that's where the children's day begins and ends. And it sounds like you have everything really strictly and reasonably in place that we need for parents to just also prepare their children for the changes and what that would look like. And if you could talk to any of the parents, because now you went from summer school to you're going to be opening up, obviously, to these 19 different school districts on a daily basis, what would you like them to know?
I think one of the most important parts are have confidence in the transportation system. We've put a good program together with our school districts, and the mask is key. Just having the students embrace it on board, and just the communication of how to interact on board, just really good. But we've put together multiple cleaning strategies, the spacing out on the vehicles, and just a very comprehensive plan. And it just, we feel good that we've made great progress through our transit operation and our school operation over the summer. And we're looking forward to getting the fall up and running.
Sounds like it's been busy times for you, as it is with most of these school districts. Tommy Smith, that's Tommy Smith from Suffolk Transportation. Tommy, thanks for taking time out from your, I would assume, a very busy schedule these days, and calling on and taking part in our show.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, before we just got a few minutes left. Lauren writes in, and this is kind of interesting. This is a good way to finish up the show. And she's saying these children are not getting consistency, and some are going to have a terrible time adjusting, which will affect them learning and end result falling behind. That's like the bottom line. How are these kids going to adjust to all of this? And child behavior consulting, that's, again.
That's where I'm coming in, and I appreciate that question. And I cannot stress this enough. September is the most important month. And with that, make sure that you know what your district's SEL program is. That social emotional learning program. That's where a lot of the ability to cope and communicate is going to be really implored and reinforced with those skills. You also want to make sure that your child feels safe. And if you're anxious, your child, of course, will feel anxious. So make sure that you're calm. And also provide some predictability. Some predictability might come in the visuals. Okay, this is what we have this day at what time. And then ask your child, what do we have today? So the child feels like they have some kind of control over their own schedule, their own environment, and decisions that are being made. Because there's going to be a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of gray areas around them. So the more that they feel like they have predictability, routines, and control in their life, they will feel more confident in what it is that they need to do. And really what they need to do is stay safe and learn, right? And they need to learn.
And just one final, Patrick writes in again, is what do you hear from the teachers? I know you speak a lot. You're in the school districts. Are they're willing to roll with the punches with this, or
they want to go back in? The teachers I have been speaking with, they are so ready. They do want their PPE. They want their masks, their face gear. I even bought the clear mask where you could see right through it for the kids. They want in. Now, I will tell you, the tough part is the technology part. It's now we have to learn the platform, but how do we get curriculum on there? But they're working through that, and that's where support comes in together too. And so overall, they can't wait to see the kids, and it's going to be hard not to hug the kids hello, right? And so overall, the healthy teachers, the ones without comorbidities, they are just waiting to go back into school and do what they love.
Yeah, just important to talk about. I couldn't ignore it on this program. We're a couple of weeks away from school from starting with Lisa Navarra, Child Behavior Consulting. Somebody wants to get a hold of you, Facebook numbers, what's out there, Lisa?
Yes, like us on Facebook and YouTube, Child Behavior Consulting. Check out our website. There's a lot of information there. You're going to see children learning and talking about what it is that we've been talking about during all of our shows. You'll love it. And the number is 631-617-1958, childbehaviorconsulting.com.
Once again, I'm Tom Schiliro. You're listening to Your Island here on 103.9 LA News Radio. We got Rich Christ coming up, talking about back to Republican National Convention. What's going on there? Where are the differences between the parties? We'll be putting Rich to the test. And once again, I want to thank Lisa Navarra, senior contributor to our program here every couple of weeks, just helping us out with some of the issues on education. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. The following are the words of Noel DiGirolamo, president of the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association.
Police officers are already being targeted for assassination. Releasing their personal information to criminals will only further endanger them. Stand with law enforcement. Defend the police.
Your Island, live and local, with your host, Tom Schiliro, on 103.9 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back as we round third. Heading up to that 2 o'clock hour now. Every Wednesday, we've got Rich Chris, Republican strategist, one of the Republican leaders in the great upstate area. And it's always great to have Rich on. Rich, how are you today, my friend?
Tom, how's everybody doing?
You know, we're watching, what we've been doing is watching these conventions, and I made the point this week that it's almost like prosecution versus the defense. The defense in this case would be Donald Trump, and the prosecution will be the Democrats. And we talked a lot about crime rates. Now, when I was doing my research over the weekend, and it's something that you've been saying quite a bit, because the governor is saying, for the most part, the police better get their act in gear, because these epidemic spike in crime right now that's been absolutely horrible is the result of the police. And I'm saying, well, this is how they're going to run on that. They're going to blame the police for the uptick in crime, and they're going to talk about police violence, and they're going to talk about systemic racism. And that's the prosecution, what they're going to be saying. And it starts with Andy Cuomo. And so I went around the state, and Syracuse had 130% increase in shootings, Rochester 54%, Buffalo 66%. And then when I came to the Albany area, because you've been speaking quite a bit about that, it is showing a 240% increase in shootings. And this is the particular area that you're in. You have said that probably the last 3 weeks on this show, that the number of cases, shooting cases in your area, particularly Albany, has been up, and the statistics are showing that right now. What are the folks in your area saying about state government? Because state government is saying it's the cops' fault.
Well, nobody's buying that. I mean, you have, two words are responsible for the uptick in violence, and that's bail reform. Bail reform is one of the great travesties of our time. It largely was pushed aside as being a focus because of COVID, but bail reform is absolutely the reason, and it will continue to be the reason. You can't have people who are criminals and criminal-minded and a criminal element essentially being told that they won't be held accountable and that they'll be out on the street, not just in the same day, but sometimes in the same few hours of when they're arrested. Yes. So people get it. It's bail reform is the reason, and voters need to hold the Democrats who push this through. They need to hold them accountable, because if not, there will be no penalty. This is how you get redress for bail reform. This is, and the secondary element, I'll say, and I'm starting to see some pushback, and I'm glad to see it. But people are understanding that the Democrat, socialist, progressive, liberal element that has been pushing for the notion that police are criminals, police are wrong, police are bad, police aren't needed, police should be defunded, that is starting to get some resistance, and that also has to be addressed at the polls. Again, this is the part where the voters come in. This is the part where the voters have to make their feelings known. They have to make their, interests and their sense of value and their investment in society known. I'm driving by right now as we're talking. I'm driving by the scene of a memorial in one of the busiest intersections in Troy, where a 23-year-old was shot in the head, and in broad daylight, brutal. And as I was crossing, had a fellow just decided to camp out in the intersection, and take his time walking across. The sense of lawlessness, the sense of disorder, the sense of criminality being prevalent and being encouraged is at an all-time high. There's only one solution. That's voting.
Yeah.
That is voting your interest. And the differences between the parties on this issue are as profound and different as they were between parties during the Civil War, when you had a pro-slavery party and a pro-abolitionist party. Yeah. This is absolutely that vital.
Well, and that's the point we've been underscoring, and that's why, again, we have you on every Wednesday, because you're hitting on our points without even knowing what we've been talking about. But when I ran across that Albany number, again, and you've been underscoring that for the last, I would say, 4 or 5 weeks, that the increase of crime in that area, and we're not just talking about New York City anymore. But then when the governor holds a press conference last week, and he said that it's because when they passed that police reform bill, he's mandating certain parts of that 15 bills that it has to be implemented by 500 police departments. I didn't even realize there were that many in New York State. It has to be mandated by April 2021, and if they're not, he's not going to allow any state funding to go into some of these smaller departments. So he's saying, if you don't do what I say, and you're not doing what I'm saying, then the crime rate's going to go up. I found that so, besides being disingenuous, but insulting to people. And of course, you're confirming it a little bit, that people are starting to get tired of it. But the question is this: could there be a change in public policy, i.e., election of statewide Republicans, at least to balance off some of this? Could that ever happen in our lifetimes, Rich Chris?
Yeah, I think so. I think these issues are starting to become so negative, so prevalent, so repetitive, that people are starting to realize it. If the folks who decided not to move out, I think they're catching on. Back to the Albany number, and I'll throw in the city of Troy, which I'm driving around right now. You have a situation where on some weeks you have more shootings per capita in Albany than you do in Chicago.
Yes.
So people who are looking out at the Midwest are saying, "Oh, look at those poor people way, way, way over there." No, this is happening right on streets, neighborhoods where many folks in our area drive. Many folks in our area have had family who've come from there or are very familiar with those neighborhoods. And a lot of these shootings, by the way, in this area are happening in broad daylight. They're not happening at night. This isn't some 2:00 in the morning showdown between drug dealer against drug dealer. This is stuff happening on street corners during the afternoons, and often in times very close to women and children.
Yes.
And it's absolutely tragic, and it is scarring our city. It's scarring our community, and it's showing that really, if you're going to push against the police doing their jobs, no one is going to be safe. No one is going to be protected. And you're going to lose the order and rationale behind our society, the way society operates. And I'll tell you, I'm seeing some sense that it's changing. Couple big things, that happened this week, and I think they are telling. In a state that's known for being strong for unions, and union strength usually translates into good things for Democrats. You had the New York Police Department, NYPD union, go very strongly for Donald Trump, and you also had the New York State Troopers unions. Those should be viewed upon by Democrats as shots across the bow politically, as reasons to rethink their ideas, because these are issues that are starting to be a political negative for them. And I'll remind you this too: Governor Cuomo and legislators had promised to look at bail reform again and make changes. And the one thing that they had promised to do was to reinstate judicial discretion, which is the largest part of why bail reform failed. Say, hey, listen, you've been here 4 times this week. You're going to cool your heels in the county lockup for a couple nights. It takes away that ability to do that, and because of that, that's why bail reform is such a failure.
But is there any way to explain? I want to get into the minds of the De Blasios and the Cuomos. Any way to explain what's in their head when they can clearly see what the increase in crime is all about? For the most part, very bad legislation, we could say that, demoralizing the police department by taking 600 plainclothes cops off the streets of New York City that were taking hundreds of guns per week off the street. Now these guns are shooting people, and the statistics are showing that. Why can't there be a pushback on their part, underscoring the fact that they've made mistakes in doing this, whether it be de Blasio or Cuomo? And it's amazing how 2 people could result in such havoc. And is havoc. Some people say, Tom, you're overplaying this. But this, as you well know, Rich, you're a student of government. You know what's going on in politics and so on. This is not about filling a pothole. These people are being shot and killed every day in this state, in those cities that I mentioned, whether it be Buffalo, Syracuse, Albany, New York City. Amazing what's going on right now, and yet their inability to admit that we've got to change what we started. And even if they didn't even want to admit that they started it, that they're the cause of it. Their lack of doing that, and how much could these people, could the people here in New York State take?
Well, you just said Bill de Blasio, if what was recounted to me is accurate. When he was asked about restaurants, he said, well, restaurants are largely things that middle class and upper class people go to, so we don't have to worry about them as a service.
Yes.
So Bill de Blasio is starting to openly admit that he arranges public service and public policies based on income. And that you're supposed to have, this is a mayor who, from what I've again been recounted, he will leave the wealthier neighborhoods in New York last on the snowplow list. So again, you have a mayor who's openly admitting that he arranges services and conduct as according to income. That's socialist. Governor Cuomo, his policy is so muddled it changes every day almost. It goes from bizarre to destructive to damaging to unbelievable, often in the space of just 2 afternoons. We have a policy now where gymnasiums can only be open with 33% capacity, and you have to wear a mask. You have to go to a bar and have a plate of salsa and chips so you can have a drink at a bar that's already got capacity reduced.
Yeah.
And we're doing this as we're telling everybody that Donald Trump is a criminal liar, but we need him to drop off $60 billion to save our state. So there is no logical end to a lot of these policies on the Cuomo side. On the de Blasio side, you have you have to make the understanding. This is a guy who's a socialist, and he's acting like a socialist. And if you do not appreciate socialism, then don't vote for him. And again, it comes down to the voters. The voters are the ones who have to rise up. I'm getting some sense, though, that that's happening. I'm seeing some pushback to some of the protests. I'm seeing some pushback. And again, I'm not saying that these protests don't have merit. I mean, the shooting in Wisconsin, again, I think that's a failure completely. Of that. That's not something that would have happened in New York State because the training
is much different.
The instruction is so much more. I mean, that is an incident that never should have happened. And I'll say it as, and I'm a guy who likes the police. My father was a state trooper. Never should have happened. But I am seeing a sense among voters, among residents, that they're recognizing that they're the ones paying for this experimentation. They're the ones paying for all of essentially the fooling around with criminal justice systems by, having theoretical reforms applied to people who do very, very bad things to our communities. So I think there's a growing sense that there has to be a change made, and I'm hoping that manifests itself in the coming 2020 election.
Right. And of course, there's methods in which to do this. I mean, some of the rioting. I mean, yesterday in Kenosha, Wisconsin, there were 2 people killed, a third one seriously injured in gunfights that are taking place on the streets right now. So, these are issues, and these are things that we, as a country and as a culture, have to deal with. But I believe that those individuals, like the mayor of New York City and like the governor of New York State, are not just on the wrong path; they're on the wrong planet when it comes to dealing with some of this and how important it is. Now, I want to get back to the prosecution defense analogy that I'm making right now, and I am hoping, because I saw a little bit of it last night, but they're not going to get the help of the major media. And I'm talking about the Republicans. I believe this thing, and I brought it up earlier in the day on the show, with Hunter Biden and his connection to Burisma and the Ukrainian National Gas Company, and how he was hired by this gas company to work deals with the federal government and so on. And you wonder that of all the people in this country with business degrees or high executives in some of the Fortune 500 companies, wasn't it kind of coincidental that Hunter Biden, who happened to be the son of the vice president of the United States at the time, gets this position and brings the wealth into the Biden family by having a job that I think many of us would like to have had. Why isn't, I mean, and you know the answer and I know the answer to this question, but I raise this rhetorically, that this is being ignored, pretty much so, by the CNNs and the MSNBCs and the left-wing media. And if this was Donald Trump Jr. instead of Hunter Biden, they would hound this story till there was no tomorrow. So the question is this: how could this be a point, and will there be credibility? Because the only way that this is going to get out, that this candidate for president, I'm talking about Joe Biden, and if all of this is true, which it is, we all know it is. We all know his kid got like $80,000 a month, and then they made that deal in China, flying on Air Force Two. All of this is true. We know the facts of all of the case here. That how is it? And how well can the Republicans use this as an issue, and what will be their credibility, other than the fact that the mainstream media is going to say it is a partisan issue and we're not going to play it up because it's just campaign silliness, the silly season that we hear. So I guess the comment I'm looking for, Rich, is where is this going to go? Are the American people going to know? Because if you ask people about Burisma and Ukrainian National Gas Company, most of the American people aren't going to know about it.
Well, I think that you're going to see a level of attack on Joe Biden that's going to take a lot of people by surprise, but there's so much material there. I also think, I've seen during the to change gears slightly, Russia's obviously going to be a centerpiece. The Hunter Biden conduct, the Biden, family connections, the contracts, the millions of dollars, huge issues. I think also anytime Joe Biden makes the point, well, you're going to be able to go back and say, but you've had 50 years to make that point and resolve it. So coming in as, you're the new fresh face, that's just not going to work. But lastly, too, I think, one of the things I'm seeing at the convention, I think the Republican convention, by the way, has been masterfully done. It's been done with an eye towards entertainment, an eye towards education. There's been a few things where I've heard what was going to be done, and I've said, boy, I don't think that's going to work. I didn't think the naturalization ceremony was going to work, and that turned out to be a very powerful moment yesterday.
Yes.
When President Trump welcomed 5 people to the country. I watched it with my girlfriend, who herself, her family immigrated from Israel.
Wow.
So it's a powerful moment to remind people of what it means to be an American, and it's also a powerful way to educate people about who Donald Trump is, that he's not a three-headed monster. The other thing, though, I'm seeing in the convention a lot of attention given towards minorities, and I think that sets the stage for what I think is going to be a very, very focused attack on Joe Biden over his 1994 crime bill sponsorship. He was very proud of doing that, and that is something that essentially, inflicted an inappropriate and inordinate amount of pain on a generation of African Americans, especially African American males, largely because they came from inner cities and they were specifically targeted for criminal prosecution that in many cases was, above reasonable standards. I think that's going to be a very, very major problem for Joe Biden. I don't see the enthusiasm for Biden coming out as I do for Trump. I think Trump is getting a lot more enthusiasm because he's essentially able to do a redirect. You go back to your prosecution and your defense. I don't think Joe Biden did a very good job presenting who he is and what he is. I think Joe Biden did a moderately good job of, setting the stage. But I don't think there's much to take.
And how important that's going to be when we finally get...
Donald Trump, I think, is really hitting the marks, and it'll be interesting to see tonight.
Well, and we'll talk to you again next week. Once again, Rich Chris, our upstate contributor, just calling on, and we really appreciate it. Rich, you have a great day. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tom.
Appreciate it. Let's take... we got Vinny's been waiting on the line. I always want to get Vinny on. Vinny, you got about a minute or so. How are you, sir? Did we lose Vinny?
How are you?
Yeah. You got about a minute, Vinny.
Hey, I just wanted to comment about the media. Again, you and I have a conversation every once in a while about the media. Real quick, CNN, talked about the shooting in Kenosha.
Yes, yeah.
And they said that the police shot an unarmed man.
Yeah, they don't know
Now,
that.
the district attorney there has not released any information about the incident.
Yeah, well, I'm
He'd
waiting.
rather
Yes,
watch.
yes.
Yeah, he'd rather watch a city burn.
Right.
And what angers me is if the DA hasn't released any information, how do they know that?
Well, they're going to make speculation. They, again, there's such an anti-police bias out there. I want to wait to see. They turned it over to I think the Wisconsin criminal justice agencies and so on. They took it out of the Kenosha Police Department's purview. I want to wait to see exactly what that's all about, and then see we'll go from there. It's tragic. It's tragic all the way around. 2 people were killed yesterday in Kenosha as a result of the rioting. Stores being looted, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars of damage being done. This is a national tragedy that we all have to deal with, and we all have to think about, and the way in which to get it back and give. Vinny, thanks for waiting. I know you waited a while, and I appreciate it. You're always welcome to call on. I'm Tom Schiliro. You've been listening to Your Island here on 103.9 LI News Radio. 2 o'clock hours upon us. Breaking it down with the great Frank McKay coming up next. Everybody have a great day, a safe day, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
The news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it.